I saw a quote in an audio forum the other day. I don't remember what it said word for word, but it went something like this. If you listen back to stuff that you worked on years ago and you cringe, or maybe you are a little ashamed at the outcome or think that you can do a better job today, that means that you are getting better at your craft. What's up, nerds? My name's Cory Bergeron. You are watching Cory Bergeron Recordings. We're back with a brand new video. The other day, someone in my Discord server asked me if hiding games was the first big project that I ever worked on. I replied, I guess so. Which translates to, it depends on what your perception of big is. What I can say is that this project was a very important one in my musical journey, and this experience, along with a bunch of other experiences, have opened the doors that have led me to where I am today. And that is here sitting in my basement talking to a camera. So after having that conversation, I remember that I had the Hiding Games Pro Tools session on an old hard drive. I found the sessions and I opened them up, and they are a complete disaster. Let me show you. But first, let me give you a little bit of context, just so you know what we're dealing with. So the year was 2015. I was 20 years old, and I had probably recorded maybe 5 to 10 projects that sounded somewhat similar to this. And I had also completed audio college. At that time, there weren't these great online music production education services such as Nail the Mix or like Pure Mix. So everything I learned was through experience and school. So here is my genuine reaction to opening up a Pro Tools session that I worked on in 2015. What's up? Okay, so in front of me I have the Pro Tools session for the song Summer Sickness that I recorded and mixed back in 2015. The working title for the song was New, and the name of this session is New_Mix Feb 25. So the first thing that stands out to me are all these markers here. We have location 1, here, end, chorus, harm 1, falsetto. The point of markers is to help you visually identify where you are in the song. Maybe while you're tracking, you can use a marker to identify where there was a mistake or a cool part of a take. I have no idea what's going on here. That's no good. Don't do that. Another thing that I'm seeing are these tempo changes, and these are good, and I actually really like the fact that we made these tempo changes. Oh, another thing to note right off the bat is I don't actually have all of the plugins that I used on this session. If I go to the mix window here, you can see that and that is because I mixed this on an old computer that wasn't mine, and it had a bunch of crack stuff on it. So there's a bunch of plugins that were used on this session that I have never used since mixing this. So with that being said, I won't be able to actually play the session the way that I mixed it, but the track is out into the world, so you can hear it there. Okay, so let's jump into these drums here. So as we can see, I'm going to turn off these groups. Oh my god, there's a group called Dance Party. This could be dangerous. Okay, so we have a track here called Kick New, and let's give this a quick little listen. So something sounds a little weird, and what that is if I go up here, I can turn on this track, and this is the actual real recorded kick drum. But I decided that the kick could be punchier. So on this track, what I did is I used the trigger plugin to trigger a sample called Kick STS, which stood for Safe to Say, which was a one-shot kick sample where the drummer hit the kick drum really hard, and then I blended that in 70% with the real kick drum, and then I committed it with EQ, just turning up the top end, and a gate. And this would have been FabFilter Pro Q2, and I have no idea what that is. That is a live insert, so I may have ran that through outboard gear or something. But the kick drum by itself, just recorded, sounds like this. Which sounds decent, like that's totally usable. But with all that processing, this is what we came out with. And I decided that the latter sounded better than the former, and I don't know how I feel about that. I believe I did the same thing for the snare drum. Let's listen to snare top new. That is atrocious. That definitely deserves jail time. So, okay, I'm missing a plugin and an insert. Let's look at what the real snare top looked like. The real snare top had a gate, and then the trigger plugin, and I had a one-shot sample of the snare drum that I recorded of the Safe to Say drummer's snare drum, and I blended that in 60% with the real snare performance. Then I threw max bass on the snare drum, more EQ, some active live insert using some analog something, SPL Transient Designer just cranking the crap out of the attack, and then more EQ. and then sending it through this bus called wow, 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 wow. And the result of all of that is this snare drum. I deserve jail time. This is what the raw organic snare drums sound like. That also deserves jail time. There's no winning on this snare drum, either way you go. Snare bottom. I listened to this one already. This is hilarious. I don't know why I made the decision to make the snare bottom sound like this. That is definitely not what it sounded like when I recorded it. I've recorded hundreds of snare bottoms since, and they've never sounded like that. Then we got the hi-hat. No processing. Who needs it? Tom 1. What do we have on these? These are the real... Oh, look at that. That's an absolute classic move. Here's the way the session was. We have the rack tom and the floor tom. Okay, you can see that I've cut them out. Now, if I go over here and I make the original tom to unhidden, it's actually live still. Is the fader up? The fader's up. So, this track was live the whole time. This probably got printed into the final mix. Let's keep moving forward. We have our overheads here. I left them super organic. I just did some EQing that I can't see. That's interesting. With the room mic, you can actually hear the live performance because the bass was recorded with the drums. I believe there was a guitar recorded with the drums as well, but I think we just ended up retracking all the guitar. Okay, so that's basically the drums. Then we have these EMT reverbs. We have a track called Explo, which sounds like something I would do. Oh, this is where things get super shot. Okay, so we have a shaker and a tambourine. This is why mix prep is important, because you just don't want to see stuff like this. Like, what is this? There's just some audio over here. Fired. I'm getting upset. Let's keep moving forward. We have the bass here. This is a live bass. I believe it was a Fender jazz bass. It was an American one. It sounded really good, and it was played through an Ampeg. Sorry, no, it was played through a Sun something. It's very expensive, and I remember really liking the bass tone on this. Okay, so there's no low end. Let's keep going to the purple rhythm guitars. Okay. Dirty 57. This is a Jazzmaster and a Rat. Honestly, I don't hate the guitars. They're a little thin and ratty, but I don't know. I think they rock. I'm adding multi-band compression to the guitar. And boosting lows. Interesting. Boosting low mid, 300 hertz. Okay, moving on to the vocals here. This is where the vocals start. This is where the vocal tracks end. As you can see, there's audio 1, audio 2, nothing on those tracks. There's a track called Bounce. That's good. It's good to have. Yell, nothing on it. Okay.
Halo, I swore I'd never let it close to me. My head's underwater, shutting out the light. And still I wait.
Yeah, I am going to remix this track because I think that would be a lot of fun. And I'm kind of curious at how good I can make it sound with what I have to work with. So yeah, this track is an absolute mess. Let's remix it. Yeah, so not very good. Not very good at all. I definitely would not hire myself. Interestingly enough, even with this disaster of a session, the songs were good enough that they still resonated with people. This release got Safe to Say signed. Songs from this release were played on TV, and it was a big chapter in everyone's life who was involved in this project. Now, the overall outcome of this mix isn't great, but it also isn't terrible. So I thought it would be fun to take the chorus of the first song off the EP and do my best to remix it and see what I can do now in 2020. So, that's what I did. Check it out.
Hands on
Surprisingly, there isn't a world of difference between the two, and that's probably because I'm using the same source material. The 2020 mix is cleaner, it's wider, and it sounds a little bit more three-dimensional. I think the drum tones are better, I think the guitars are less fizzy and buzzy, and I think the vocals are a lot tighter and probably tuned a little better. Although I will say there is a special charm and energy in the 2015 mix that the 2020 mix doesn't have. So that's interesting. Okay, so if you have any experience mixing music, especially if you have any experience mixing other people's music, you know that the source material can easily limit how good you can make something sound. If the arrangement sucks, that's a challenge. If the quality of the recording sucks, that's a challenge. If the performance sucks, that's a challenge. Okay, so just to make this a little educational, let me comment on a couple things that I think are limiting my ability to make this mix sound better. The first thing is the snare drum. The snare drum on the original recording sounds like the skin on it is like 25 years old and it has 15 moon gels on it, meaning that it has absolutely no tone. Also, the cymbals don't sound very great. I would probably swap them all out for Zildjian K Customs. Thinking back on the drum recording, I don't think we put any thought into what cymbals we were using, and we just used the cymbals that the drummer had. And yeah, that's generally not how you want to operate. The guitars are filled with super annoying buzzy frequencies. So what I would probably do is if I could go back to the recording, I would switch the cab out number 1 and use something with V30s, because I remember we used an old crappy Marshall cab to record these guitars. I would also record a DI track along with the amp recording, just to give myself flexibility in the future. Interestingly enough, the drums and bass were recorded at the same time, and that can be a good thing, that can be a bad thing. In this case, it was a bad thing because I was more focused on making sure the drum performance was good that I didn't realize that the bass recording was terrible. The vocal performances in the chorus weren't bad by any means, but I think there could definitely be a little bit more energy in the backup vocals, and I think there could be more energy in the vocals and the verses throughout the track that aren't showcased in this video. I think the vocal arrangement could be more exciting and more interesting, and I generally like to have 3 tracks of the main vocal, pan 1, center, and 2 left, right. And in this case, I only had a center and a double. So yeah, those are the things that I think are limiting my ability to make it the best mix of all time. But with that all being said, I think it does sound pretty decent. Anyways, that was a lot of fun digging up an old session and laughing at all the terrible decisions my 20-year-old self made. Okay, so I guess to give this video kind of a point and create a lesson within it, I would say that if you are at the start of your audio production journey, to keep putting the time in and to do your best to learn at every step of the way. Nobody is great from the start. It takes a lot of time to figure out how to do things and how you like doing things, but you do get better. So stick with it. If you suck now, you will get better. Okay, so that is it for the video. If you have not, be sure to join my Discord server. I will leave a link below. You can talk to me directly. We can talk about audio. We can talk about all things Lockett. I'm on it every single day, so if you want to chat about anything that you think is interesting, join that. Hit me up. Let's talk about stuff. I like talking. So that is it for the video. Make sure to drop a thumbs up, subscribe, and create more. I will see you in the next video.